Hey guys, so today's the 23rd of July, which means that tomorrow it will be 6 months that I've been travelling alone around the world. And I'm very excited. I thought this would be the perfect time to sit down and actually share some of my knowledge with you guys, give you tips and tricks on what I have done, what I'm doing, because it might be helpful. First thing I'm going to do is tell you all about my Kiwi Experience trip and answer some of your questions. So let's get going. In January 2016, I left the UK with a loose plan of what I wanted to do, which was I wanted to visit New Zealand, Australia and Southeast Asia in that order, and I wasn't going to come back to the UK until I'd seen all three. My first stop was New Zealand. I knew that it was going to be the most expensive stop for me because New Zealand is an expensive country anyway, and there were loads of activities on my bucket list that I wanted to do whilst I was in New Zealand. I also knew that I was going to be travelling alone, but I had never travelled alone before. And although I was really excited by the prospect of having that freedom, I was still conscious of the fact that I would be completely on my own, and I wanted that comfort of being in a social situation. It's a mouthful. In a social situation that would allow me to make friends and meet other people fairly easily. So I looked at my options and I gathered that I could either do a tour around New Zealand, or I could rent a car or a camper van, or I could hitchhike, which I was never going to do because I'm not that brave, or car share, which is where you leave messages on a website and you let people know that you're planning to travel from X to Y during these days, and if there is anyone that is going in that direction or that would like to join you, then you rent a car together, or perhaps they already have a car and you just share the costs of that trip. And it's a good way to meet people, but again, you don't really know who you're getting in a car with, so there are pros and cons. And to be honest, there are pros and cons with each method of travel. You just have to weigh up your options, see what your priorities are, and in my case I decided that the best option for me would be to do a tour. So I looked at Stray, and at the time I remember thinking that Kiwi Experience was geared towards the younger backpacker and Stray was geared towards kind of the older generation. I don't actually know if that is a true reflection of how it is, because I met older people on the Kiwi Experience, and when we stopped in certain places and we came across stray buses, I came across quite a few young people on those buses. So I think it's a real mix, and I think you'll have a good time on both. So personally, I decided to go with the Kiwi Experience, and that was that. Now, I was lucky enough that around the time that I was planning my trip and starting to book things, which was around October, November 2015, the whole kit and caboodle pass was on sale. They always have one of their passes on sale, so you can always get quite a good deal. But I was particularly lucky because the whole kit and caboodle is their most comprehensive pass, and it combines the funky chicken, which is the core route around the North and South Island, and then it includes the Bay and Cape, which goes up to Cape Reinga and Bay of Islands right at the top of the North Island. It also includes the Deep South, which goes all the way down to Dunedin and Invercagill, and I may be saying all of these wrong. And it includes Milford Explorer, which takes you to Milford Sound. So I can't remember exactly how much I paid for it, but I believe it was around the 300 to 350 pounds, which was really good because it includes your entire travels around New Zealand. This is also valid for a period of 12 months, so if you leave New Zealand and then come back within 12 months, you can reuse it free of charge. and you can use it multiple times, so there is no limit as to how many times you get on and off the bus. So those were all good selling points to me. I decided to go ahead and book that, so I had my tour pre-arranged before I left New Zealand. Sorry, before I left the UK. I also like that because I like to be somewhat organised. I don't like to plan everything to the last detail because I think that doesn't leave you much flexibility, but I like to have a plan and I like to know more or less what I want to do, where I'm going to do it, and just so that I can work up my budget. So the bus went from Auckland to Bay of Islands to Cape Reinga, back to Auckland, and then from Auckland to Hot Water Beach, Rotorua, Taupo, River Valley and Wellington, and that covered the entire North Island. Then we got the ferry over from Wellington to Picton. We didn't stop in Picton, we went straight to Kaiteriteri, which is where the Abel Tasman National Park is located. Westport, Lake Mahinapua, Franz, Josef, Wanaka, Queenstown. From Queenstown you can do the Milford Explorer, which takes you to Milford Sound and back to Queenstown. I then carried on the deep south leg of the trip, which takes you to Dunedin, Invercagill and back to Queenstown once again. And then from Queenstown we headed to Lake Tekapo, Christchurch, Kaikoura, which was the last new stop on the tour, because then it goes back to Wellington via the ferry, Taupo and back to Auckland. New Zealand did not disappoint. There are so many activities you can do and it all depends on how long you have and how big your budget is. I had a list of things I wanted to get done. My priorities were a skydive, a bungee jump, going up Franz Josef Glacier on the helicopter and doing the hike, and swimming with dolphins. So I knew those were must-dos for me and I budgeted for them before I even left England. There are hundreds and hundreds of activities you can do. You can do whitewater rafting, blackwater rafting, which again was one of my must-dos actually, because you get to see the glowworm caves. You can do hikes, you can do kayaking, paddleboarding, you can do horse riding. You name it, you can do it. That is, I found, what ends up renting most of your budget, so you have to be careful, and I would suggest that you write down exactly the things that you really want to do. Make sure you have enough money for them, put that money aside, or even pre-book those activities so you know that they're done, and then anything else you can do on top of that, great. Okay, so as I went along on the Kiwi Experience bus, I jotted down things that I at the time thought this would be helpful to know or to have known beforehand. So I've got some notes here, and just like literally scrap pieces of paper that I would find along the way, and let me share some of these with you. So in no particular order, Wi-Fi in the hostels in New Zealand is not free, which is very annoying, especially if, like me, you blog or need the internet on a regular basis. It's around $3 to $4 New Zealand dollars per 24 hours of access. The Kiwi Experience does shopping stops, so they will stop at the bigger and cheaper supermarkets. This is where everyone tends to buy food and supplies to then cook at the hostels to stay within budget. Not very many people tend to eat out. I found that everyone I came across was trying to spend as little as possible, so everyone would be buying things like pasta, rice, 2-minute noodles, basically carb heavy diets, because vegetables and meat just cost a lot of money. But again, if you're smart and if you are good with your money, there's no reason why you can't have a healthy diet whilst you're away. You just have to think a bit more about what you're buying and how you're going to cook it and when you're going to cook it. Because you'll be cooking a lot, I found that you'll need the following things on a regular basis, so you might as well buy them right at the beginning and you have them throughout your trip. What you will need is a fridge bag. They are $3.99 and you can buy them from any supermarket, and that's a good way to store all of your food, to carry it on the bus with you, and to store it when you get to the hostel kitchens. You have to keep your food in a bag to put in the kitchen fridge, and they usually want you to label it as well with your name, room number and date of departure. That way people are less likely to steal your food because it's clearly not theirs. You will also need a lunchbox because, again, when you're cooking and if you cook in bulk, then you'll find that you always have leftovers. So you'll need a couple of lunch boxes so you can make a bit more and then store it and have it the next day for lunch or dinner or snacks or whatever. And again, that will save you money. And you also need salt and pepper. Some hostels will have it, some won't. Some of you guys don't even use it, salt and pepper, but I do. I like to season my food, so I found that I just bought a small salt and a small pepper, always had it with me, and whatever I cooked, it wasn't bland, at the very least. If you can, I would suggest that you start your Kiwi Experience trip in Auckland. This is where most people start the tour. And the reason I say that is because you will end up being with the same people more or less throughout the entire trip, which means that when everyone gets on in Auckland, relationships will form, friendship groups will come together. And I found that later on, when we were, I don't know, a couple of weeks into the tour and people joined us, it was slightly uncomfortable for them and slightly intimidating to kind of join one of the groups just because everyone already knew each other. I mean, everyone's friendly and everyone is on the same boat, so people will be welcoming, but it is, personally, I think, better to start somewhere where everyone is in the same boat and no one knows each other, and you all get a chance to introduce yourselves and bond with people that are closer to your own personality and interests. Something that amazed me in New Zealand is that you can get $5 Domino's. Now, if you're from England, you'll know that Domino's in England is atrociously expensive. It's around $20 for a pizza, or £20 even for a pizza. And in New Zealand, and actually in Australia as well, now that I'm here, I know, you can get $5 Domino's. Just blows my mind. I didn't experience this myself, but a lot of people that were on the bus with me were at one point or another put on standby. This means that they don't have a guaranteed seat on the bus. They are on a list, and if anyone changes their plans, so if anyone doesn't get on the bus, then they'll be able to get on the bus to the next stop. It's not the end of the world because things change very quickly. People's plans change really quickly. But it can be inconvenient, especially if you're traveling with a friend, because sometimes their friend would end up having a seat on the bus and they wouldn't, so either they had to split up or the friend had to stay behind, which again is inconvenient, especially if you're in a tight schedule. So what I would suggest is that you pre-book your seat and you reconfirm your seat whenever possible, because booking your seat in advance does not guarantee that you have a seat on the bus. I thought it did, turns out it doesn't. You need to reconfirm your seats closer to the time. At least that's what we were told on several occasions throughout the trip. I don't know if they have now improved their system because it is very irritating. You have to phone the Kiwi Experience office and you are often on hold for a very long time, especially during peak season, because everyone's trying to ask the same questions and try to get the same information, so everyone's ringing at the same time and it does get chaotic and you do have to spend time on the phone on hold, but that's just the nature of the beast. Obviously the Kiwi Experience tour is on a bus. Be prepared to be on the bus a lot. I mean, a lot. If you do the minimum nights that the Kiwi Experience suggests, then you will be moving from one stop to the next pretty much every day. So you will be on the bus for hours every single day. Now, if you have a longer time frame, you can split that up. But if you don't, if you do the tour in, 20 to 30 days, which is the minimum amount of time, then you will be on the bus a lot. So just be prepared for that and just enjoy the views, because if there's one perk of being on the bus and travelling around New Zealand, is that the views are stunning. Wherever you go, they're stunning. One of the things I loved about the Kiwi Experience is the girls don't wear makeup. Now, I worked in an office before I left England, and I never left the house without wearing makeup. I always put makeup on every single day, whether I was going to work, to the office, and I had to be, put together and presentable, or I was going out for dinner. Even if I was going for a run, I'd put something on. That is just the way I personally am, and that was also the way that my social situations, and I don't want to say encouraged me to be, but I don't know, I would feel unkept and if I wasn't wearing makeup. Now, you get on the Kiwi Experience the first couple of days, and if you're like me, you've just arrived from a winter in England, so you're pasty as, and you're wearing makeup, and then you look around and most of the girls are not. And as soon as you realise it's acceptable to go au naturel and just flaunt the bare skin, then it just opens up a whole new world because of freedom. Like, I would spend 20 minutes at least in the morning putting my makeup on, which, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy. I found it really therapeutic to do my makeup in the morning, but it saves you so much time. Like, you literally wake up, you wash your face, and you're ready. It's great. And actually you would feel quite odd wearing makeup and being all done up, because no one else is, so you would feel out of place. And again, it gives you a chance to enjoy being natural and prioritising other things other than makeup and looking good. Like, that is not the main focus. You're there to travel, you're there to experience new things, you're there to meet new people. You're not there to showcase your long lashes and rosy cheeks. It's refreshing and I really enjoyed it. And don't get me wrong, as I said, I love makeup and I love being done up, but it's just nice to not have to do that, or not feel like you have to do it, because you never actually have to do that, but not feel like you have to do that to fit in. And I'm rambling on now, but you know what I mean, girls. One thing you should know, guys, is that you need a flight out of New Zealand to be allowed into New Zealand. I didn't know this until I read a blog, and I don't think many people know this in advance, but yes, if you don't have a working holiday visa for New Zealand, you will have to show your ticket out of New Zealand when you check into your flight to New Zealand. The ferry ticket from the North Island to the South Island is not included in your travel pass. You will have to pay extra for that. So overall, would I recommend the Kiwi Experience bus tour? Yes, I would. Do I think it's good value for money? Yes, I do. Are there things that could be improved? Yes, there are. Especially the situation with seats on the bus. And the other thing that perhaps I didn't like so much is that you're on a strict schedule. Understandably so, but if you want more flexibility and you're maybe travelling with someone, I would suggest renting a car, because you do have more flexibility. You see, New Zealand has amazing views, amazing places where you can just stop on the side of the road and admire the environment and what is around you, and you can't really do that if you're on the bus. You're only allowed to stop where the bus driver decides to stop. Most of the time those are pre-planned stops anyway. I'm actually going back to New Zealand in November 2016, so in a couple of months' time, and I'm going to be going around the islands, both the north and the south, in a camper van. So I'm going to have a completely different experience of New Zealand. and look at it from a different perspective. I'm really excited about that, and once I've done that I'll be able to compare both options. But until then guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them below. Have a great time and see you soon.